non-humans to actually speak. More on that, but we're still. AI is the sat nav, it doesn't drive the car.
Did you get censored out by some chance? That's why we couldn't hear you?
Welcome to The Stream, Season 5, an unscripted, unedited, free-flowing conversation featuring guests who reject the status quo with a bias for action in the world of water and beyond. My name is Tom Freyberg, and I'm a content director specializing in water.
And I'm Will Sarney, a water strategy consultant and investor, doing my part to solve wicked water problems.
And we're delighted to be back with the first episode, Season 5. A big thanks and shout out to our knowledge partners and sponsors to make this happen. And we are absolutely thrilled to bring Victoria Edwards, who is the co-founder and CEO of Fido Tech in the UK, to get things rolling and get things moving with a bang. Victoria, thanks for joining us. Good to see you.
It's good to be here. It's funny to be on this side of the desk. I did start out as a radio DJ on a very local radio arts program called the Chiltern Radio Arts Program. Let's work out the acronym for that, and that's really the standard I set. So I could choose a music, but that was it. So I'm delighted to be here and looking forward to the conversation.
Well, there we go. We should probably switch roles halfway through, right? You can switch into you us. I think that'd be amazing. Great. We could probably learn a lot from you with your radio hosting background.
No, I used to have a safety net of a delay filter. You have no safety net of a delay filter, so you're very brave, gentlemen. I'm looking forward to it.
We're pretty unvarnished, as they say.
Very good. So, Victoria, we've got loads we want to chat with you about today. Obviously, the water leakage space, the digital space, being an entrepreneur, co-founder, all of those things that I guess the listeners are used to. But I think you mentioned there your radio background. So I want to talk a bit about your classical music training, but I think a comment that I want to start with, and I've heard you say this a few times, is, and you've actually said this at events as well, when you kind of look at the state of the nation of the water industry and you say, in fact, all of us should be fired. You should be made redundant because, right? I mean, what a ballsy phrase that is, because of this 40% leakage rate around water, right? So of all the product produced on average around the world, between 30 to 40% is lost in the networks through non-revenue water, either aging infrastructure, water theft. And you said, right, this is what's kind of, the bit between your teeth. This is what you're going after. How do you what sort of response do you get when you say that statement to people?
It's very interesting, actually. When I first said that, I'm a water virgin, I've only been in the industry 3 years. They said, oh, don't worry, they won't be around for very long. They're just one of those little annoyance companies that come up with this idea, try and get into the water industry. They're never going to break in. Don't worry about it. Now, when I say it, they go, oh, right, perhaps she's got something here. And it's quite interesting. So everybody that said to me, we're proprietary technology and we've been doing it this way, and we've been using our listening sticks. And, the answer to the problem is to put more people with listening sticks, just like the Romans did, because that's what we always do. And I'm saying, not the way forward. The only way forward is to take all that great technology you've got stuck in a cupboard because somebody said they've got to look like they're doing something so that they'll spend some money, grab it out of the cupboard, work together, and face the inconvenient truth that we're really bad at it, at solving this problem that's been there for 50 years.
Yes, complacency prevails. I mean, to your point, it's good enough is good enough.
I think it's complacency. I also think it's fear. And I think it's fear because, as I keep saying to you, if you're in a big corporate structure that is a water company, and you don't choose to go sit in double maths on a Friday afternoon, say, I can do this, I'm going to go into the water industry. It's a traditional industry that's safe. It doesn't encourage people to actually stand up and put their head above the parapet and say, I'm going to take a chance on this. Nobody ever gets fired for hiring, buying IBM kits or solutions. Actually, it may not solve the problem, but they're not going to lose their job. There's no framework to allow people in big corporations to stand up and fail. And until that happens, and until we're prepared to take a chance, I don't think anything's going to change, because regulation hasn't done it. Environmental need hasn't done it. The fact we're at we've got day zero, the world's running out of water, hasn't spurred a collective action. So what is still missing? Why are we being, yes, one, complacent, but two, so risk-averse, so frightened of standing up and saying, I believe in human life, so therefore I want to provide water? I mean,
Victoria, doesn't this come down to a culture issue, whether it's utility side or the industrial side, and even the public sector, which is, if you have a learning culture, if you have a culture that, understands risk taking, embraces risk taking, then you can do big things. Then you're not afraid of failing, as opposed to, really what we're seeing right now, which is, that culture of good enough is good enough, and I'm not going to take a chance because I don't want to lose my job or whatever it may be.
But also, and I think this is quite apt at the moment, talent doesn't always rise to the top. We've just seen that in the UK today. Sometimes it can be stifled, can't it? Actually, you've got Alexis or the PM, or whoever it might be now. So I'm sorry if we're date something this, but there's some great talent in the water industry. It's absolutely there. But sometimes the right talent's not in the right job to be able to affect that change.
Victoria, I wouldn't worry about time stamping this. I think the transition of when we record this and when we come out, we'll probably have 2 or 3 more prime ministers and probably several more chancellors of the exchequers by the time this is published. I wouldn't worry too much. Sorry, go on, Will.
And okay, now we're just going to run down this path of politics, but I actually do love that you burn through prime ministers quickly. I in some ways, I think that's an advantage in the scheme of things, because whatever damage can be done, it's short-lived. So
I mean, completely trash the economy and have a knock-on impact on other world economies, and then leave, right? And kind of
gotta go.
Yeah, that's it. Sorry, guys, mic drop. I'm off now. Mortgage rates go from 2% to 6%. That's my legacy. See you later, guys.
Wait. One last thing. Do you think she checked on the head of lettuce on the way out, just to kind of compare?
I don't think she's ever going to be a vegetarian. That's for sure. that day's long gone. But it is a serious. But the impact that it has is it creates a distraction that has deep and meaningful impact. And yet the thing that actually causes the people the most, erosive is cost of living crisis, the whole thing. Mm-hmm. But we're allowed to be wasteful and profligate with something that we all need, and that's water, and the ability for us all to have water. And I think what I see in this industry is the risk averse, the complacency, but also the territorialness of water. And I think that has to stop. Territorialness of water, of technology, of silos, of jobs and positions. It's all protectionist. We've seen what's happened with the war. The first thing that happened in the Ukraine is Putin. He decided to weaponize water in Mariupol. Mm-hmm. And we're sitting here saying, actually, as long as we've got our water, we're absolutely fine. There's no global understanding that there's only the same amount of water. It doesn't belong to anybody. It's not territorial, but we're turning it into a territorial geopolitical problem. Well, we're not bringing in the talent to say, oh, well, don't worry about that. I firmly believe wars will be fought over water until we come together globally to actually fix this problem. Because the cheapest form of water is leakage. It's not building shiny new desalination plants. It's not abstracting more. There is no more water. Water is a finite resource. We're saying, actually, fix your leakage. When you're losing 40% and people aren't turning, can't turn on their taps, when people can't survive because of water, they don't want a borehole. They want security of people to stand up and say, we believe in the democratization of water, that water should be available to all. And we're not going to allow that complacency to say, actually, we've got to not have a shower or turn off my tap because you're losing 40% of what's sitting beneath our feet. Why have we allowed it to happen for so long? Is it fear? Is it complacency? Is it territorial? I think it's a mixture of all of them.
It's still kind of madness, isn't it? I remember writing an article about this when I first started reporting on the water sector back in 2010, 2011 on kind of water loss and looking into the World Bank reports. And I kind of just made this quite crude, simple analogy. I said, if you had a kind of farmer sending basically 4 kind of lorry loads of grain out every day, and 3 lorry loads, get the maths right. 3, very simple maths here. 3,
it's yours.
I know, it's pretty easy, 30%. But anyway, 3 lorry loads of grain, and every single day on the road, one of these went missing, and that was accepted as part of the business. You would kind of think, okay, we need to really evaluate, invest, and find out what's going on. 30% of my feedstock, my revenue is being lost. But do you think now that I guess the reason more companies are coming knocking on your door, Victoria, is the phrase necessity is the mother of invention. So now we're seeing traditional water sources dwindling, becoming less of, and actually fixing leaks is one of the ways to put more water back into the system. Do you think, because we're seeing these more extreme cases, that more focus is being put onto the private sector and looking for those solutions?
Yeah, I think so. And water scarcity is a key driver. But what we're saying is then you're still hitting silos within these large water companies, so that the C-suite may say it's great. I mean, the CFO buys in one utility, $140 million of water, then loses half of it. And he's going, why am I losing $70 million? What are we going to do about it? But the person down on the ground is still saying, well, what do you want me to do? How do you want me to change? Help me change. What do I need to do?
Right.
And then you've got technology being proprietary and going, well, my technology is a bit better than yours, especially on a rainy day. My technology works better at Friday at 4 o'clock. So if you use mine and use somebody else's, you're stupid. And so we took that apart and we said, we don't care what technology you use, what hardware, what piece of kit. This is a global problem. We'll be sensor agnostic. So we will take any audio data from any piece of hardware. And if you haven't got any hardware, we'll give you hardware. Why wouldn't you give hardware away? And we'll use our AI to tell you where your leaks are and rank them by size so you can hit the biggest ones. Now, that really upset the industry for a start, because one, I hadn't earned my stripes, because we came into the industry from the outside. And it is a little bit like in here, in the UK, there are certain pubs, country pubs, and Tom will know this. If you walk in, people turn around and look at you. And you thought, what are you doing here? Where's my
tank? Yeah, I've worked in some of those. Yeah.
I played a piano in summer, trying to earn my dues. The songs they wanted me to play weren't, it didn't really go with the Chopin Prelude, but which was all I was capable of. But I think that's quite serious. That yes, we are getting calls, but I'm a great believer that good technology is an extension of a process that's already there. It's an extension of the human. So people say to us, "You're AI, I'm going to lose my job." Okay. AI is going to give you the certainty of the next action you need to take as a human. That's what it's there for. And until we have that conversation that actually the C-suite may make the decision, but it's the people doing it as the day-to-day job that don't understand that decision, don't understand the impact, don't understand, and get rid of this level of competitiveness and absolutely help them. Great technology, I believe, to make that change is that extension of what you're doing, an extension of the human to give you the result that we need.
Victoria, do you think there's a little bit of fear involved here? I mean, not just risk-taking, but the role of artificial intelligence replacing the workforce. I mean, we see it in other sectors, but I'm curious if you bump into that.
Yeah, and I think, and I'm all a believer. Our motto at Fido is making visible what is invisible. And sometimes that means it's an inconvenient truth. There's data that's going to come out that is inconvenient about the state of your network, about how operationally efficient you are. But what AI doesn't do, it's not there to replace. It's there to give you the right information with an erring accuracy, whether it's a rainy Friday or very hot and say 40 degrees on a Tuesday afternoon, to allow the right action and decision to be taken. And that decision is still taken by a human. I think automation is a bigger threat to this industry than AI. AI is there to give you that next action. Good
Right.
AI is that you can then take and verify. And so, but anybody hears about AI, and there's this great T-shirt, isn't there? There's 12 stages evolution of man. AI at the moment, and I'm going to disagree with Elon Musk. I'm sorry. I know he's having a great docu-series on the BBC. AI is at level 2, not stage 12. And it's how you give it.
I encourage you to disagree with Elon.
It seems to be a common trend, Will. Quite a few of our guests over the seasons have actually said, look, we're quite anti-Elon and we're going to disagree with Elon.
He pivoted very nicely from being the hero of EVs to I want no part of that man and what he buys. So that's just what I hear on the street.
Yeah, exactly. But I think AI, absolutely. When we mean true AI, and we don't just mean machine learning but that gives insight and makes represent. So it's really very, very interesting. So what does good AI do? Well, AI knows the answer, but how do we know how it's got to that answer? That explainable AI. So why is it this black box it disappears into? And one of my guys, because I'm surrounded by a team of geniuses, I've got physicists, philosophers, graduates, and there was one in our team, and he's straight out of university. I said to him, you know what, your first job's not meant to be like this. It's meant to be a bit boring and grunt work and going, yes sir, let's do what I want. And he said, the beauty of explainable AI, what we're working on, is I know I'm looking at a cow, and I know the horns are important. You standing out on the street trying to find that leak don't know that I'm looking at a cow, and that's what I'm looking for. But you give me a picture of a chicken, so I'm going to tell you that you haven't found a cow. You need to keep going. But when you do find a cow, I'm going to explain to you why you found the cow and why I've got to that. So it's a matter of, and that sounds a weird analogy, it's about giving the human the confidence that the AI is right, so they become to trust it, so it becomes just an extra piece in their toolkit, in their armory, to make that right decision. At the moment, nobody's solved how to get non-humans to actually fix a leak. More on that, but we're still AI is the sat nav, it doesn't drive the car. Right.
It's also I guess the initial information that you're feeding it into, right? Because I remember you mentioned when you were getting your stripes in the water industry, Victoria, and I remember it was at a quite a well-known event in London, and it was during one of these, Dragon's Den, Shark Tank type things that have been done 1,000,001 times before, and it was pretty standard. You had, without stereotyping, men in grey suits kind of pitching and starting by saying, water scarcity is going to be big. And you got up on the stage and you didn't say anything in this bright red dress, and you just played this sound. And I was next to, I think, a utility guy, an investor, and everyone was like, what's going on? And you almost like, there's a bit of a, who is this lady? And there's just this sound playing. And you said, that, ladies and gentlemen, is the sound of a leak. And that was kind of the start of your pitch, TED Talk, which was absolute genius to kind of get attention, right? But in actually kind of drilling that down to something serious, that's because the data that you're feeding it, and you're taking the sound so that AI can then recognize leaks based on the size, which others can't do, based on experience that you're continually feeding it, right?
Yeah, but Fido AI is true global collaboration. So despite all the utility companies saying we do collaborate as a tick in the box, this is true collaboration because we've decided that a leak is an asset. It's a living thing. It's not a transient event that then just disappears. So anywhere it is in the world, from any piece of hardware, it's a logger, a hydrophone, a Fido bug, it doesn't matter. The AI says, right, this is a leak or it's not a leak. And let's be really clear here. Let's make a clarification. Water pipes are really noisy. So people that say, we can do acoustic noise detection, what they mean is they can detect noise, not leaks. If they say you can do acoustic leaks, on average, about 28% of all those noises are not leaks. So when our AI said, right, I don't care where it's come from, because we know what a cow should look like. And it's not just picture matching, it's making decisions at hundreds of different decision points to get to the best outcome. It says, I'm going to give it a unique Fido ID number. I'm going to turn it into a living thing, and I'm going to track it. And I'm going to track it whether it's on the Champs-Élysées, whether it's in Rio, whether it's in wet and windy Wigan. And I'm going to track it through to its investigation and repair. And I'm going to quantify it. And I'm going to self-mark myself and say, yes, that's a false positive, or it's false negative, or that, no, that's right. So we're starting globally, all of us together, by analyzing these files and around the world, building up more and more knowledge to feed the AI, to learn and train more, to say, actually, how do leaks actually exist? What's the environment for them to exist in? So us finding leaks is just the start. We can do it, it's a given. What else is that data telling us?
I love how you frame that. A leak is a living thing. It's alive and obviously dynamic. That's a really interesting concept and way to frame it.
Yeah, because we know 95% of leaks don't appear above ground, but we also need to know the size. The size of the leak. And you've got to learn how quickly, which we can now do, those small leaks. You don't want somebody outside your house 6 times that year digging up to fix a little stop tap dribble. You want to hit the largest leaks first, because that's the only way we're going to tackle water global scarcity. And I want to do it. I want to say to the industry, right, we can extrapolate how much water is being used and how much are large leaks. Let's all do an exercise together. If we all made a commitment to only fix large leaks, not dig anything else, not go searching for anything else, could we solve our water scarcity problem? And in order to do that, how do we need to feed that engine? But nobody's done that calculation. To me, it's obvious. You know, if you've got a problem and you say, actually, I can solve this problem by doing less,
Right.
collaborating
Right.
together, why don't you do it?
It's almost a
Right.
sort of collective movement that's needed, right? But it needs to, I guess.
So that's my point. That's my point, Tom. It's collective movement. Regulation hasn't happened. The UN hasn't got got enough teeth. There is different, Ofwat is strong in the UK, but it makes it all short-termism. It's bashing the utility company. It's not fair to bash the utility company all the time. You've got to help them give that framework. I think this collective movement comes from community agency. I think we've got to make it that point that we have to get the community to understand, appreciate the value of water, but give them agency to make this change.
This is really interesting and incredibly powerful on the industrial side. What sort of the cornerstone of water stewardship for companies is collective action, and that's very much risk driven, and it's bringing in a range of stakeholders, even competitors in a pre-competitive space, to solve water. So what you're doing and what you're driving towards is really expanding the stakeholder group and democratizing access to the data to affect change. And that's fairly revolutionary, might I add.
You mentioned there, Victoria, about sorry, there's some noise outside the window. I think it's a few probably Liz Truss fans who are a bit disgruntled at leaving. I'm not sure, but so if you hear any shouting or banging, you know who it is, just in case. But
that wouldn't be a noise, Tom. It'd be a whimper. But anyway, sorry.
Right, a couple of screams. But anyway, you mentioned about community agency then, because Will, we've talked about this with some guests in the past. It's like, how can we kind of get over the general apathy towards water, where it is taken for granted, not only from people or from ministers naturally. So you think that by getting people, I guess, democratizing access to information on water leakage, water loss is one way to drive that interest, that community agency, and one way of doing that is perhaps through sort of gamification, serious gaming.
Well,
sorry, Will, go.
I mean, Victoria, I want to go back to something you said pretty early, which is, water's invisible. It's essentially free. Those people that value water are the ones that don't have access to water. And if they do have access to water, they, more often than not, have contaminated water. So, Jackson, Mississippi, or Flint, or, millions of other places in the world. So it's getting to those folks that take water for granted. You turn the tap on and it shows up and it doesn't kill you. So, why care?
Well, yeah, and that's a really important point. You care, but I think most of the world has been affected by seeing water scarcity. But most of the world hasn't got anything to coalesce around because we don't know what to call it. So all the politicians can remember the word net zero. So we're all racing to head towards net zero. Great, 2030, 2040, 2050, let's move that number. We can hold on to that. We're day zero now. And the communities need to understand that. So they need to feel it. They need to see it. They need to see what we're losing. They need to feel involved. And that's why I think gamification, I think it addresses more than, if you can imagine that you can have a game where you know where all your leaks are, and you can like geocaching, like Pokemon Go, you can walk around and you'll get something, by walking over this sensor, you found a large leak, and well done. Then the utility company, firstly, will be embarrassed. So I applaud any water company that's going to work with us, because they're going to show how many leaks they've got on the network. But the positive, isn't it? Don't you think? The community now knows the state of its network, its sole source of life, and what state it's in. Now the utility company can work with the communities and say, but we're coming to fix this large one, and we're doing it here. And now we've done it. Well done. You've saved enough water for 3 swimming pools where you're going swimming on a Friday. And I think it's not about beating anybody up. It's about making water, understanding that value, but making sure you've got some power and some agency to do something about it.
That there's another interesting point here, in that, historically in the utility sector, the conversation has been one way, which is the utility sends you a bill, you look at it, and you're either not amused or you don't care.
And if
you
but it's always negative, isn't it?
Right. And if you do care, you call the customer hotline and sit there for a while. And that conversation is now becoming a two-way conversation. And what you're talking about is really amplifying that in a bigger way, where it's much more dynamic and engaging.
It's a positive engagement,
Right,
because
right.
but because it unveils, it's making visible, and sometimes that visibility is uncomfortable. It's uncomfortable for all of us. And it's like I say, we are in a state. This is a state, but we're going to work together to fix it. All right, we're going to understand the size of the problem, and we need to lay that bare. You know, making shareholders happy by building a shiny new desalination plant is the easy answer. Look, I've spent all this money, so I'm trying really hard. Or I've put more people on the ground, so at least we're trying. We're knowing it's not going to fix the problem, but please don't, shareholders and investors, if they are really committed to this ESG movement, if they're committed to what they say, this social license to operate that we keep being banded around, if they're really committed to it, and there's some great companies that are starting to do this from outside the water industry, they will take the bull by the horns and say, let's work with the community, let's work with it, let's see the size of the problem, and then let's make sure it's fixed. And then we can live in a world where water is available for all. It's not a problem that can't be fixed. We're not looking for a cure for cancer. We have the solutions and the technology out there. We don't have the framework and the impetus. And I'm determined to poke the bear until we get that done, because it's an excuse.
I think, keep poking away. But just to kind of reflect on both what you said, I mean, it's from Will talking about the sort of historic relationship, it's almost moving things from quite transactional into a two-way relationship where you're kind of empowering people, and I'm not going to say consumers, because I think even the very word consumers means you're buying something. You're empowering people to uncover these inconvenient truths by democratizing access. But also, I think you've got to make it fun, right? You've got to sort of engage them. You think about anything that's been gamified or fun, it's addictive. It's kind of, okay, there's a reason to go back. And I think otherwise people will do it once and they're like, okay, I found the leak and now we'll move on. If there's some incentive and then they're helping their community have access to more water, there's the environmental reward. There's multi levels to that.
But you could play it globally and say, actually, my water for finding a Fido large leak in this Pokemon Go type environment, I'm going to swap that with somebody in Mozambique or wherever it is, and donate wouldn't it be great if we had a world where we get back into bath, we can donate water. Wouldn't it be great to say, actually, I'm going to the water saving that I've made, I don't want it for my community, I want it for that community over there. And then that's
right.
That'd be amazing.
Really interesting concept. It's a little like cause marketing. If you buy a product, a portion of the the cost goes to some NGO, whatever it may be. But if you could craft a different transaction where it's actually going to the user of the water directly, as opposed to some entity, that'd be really interesting and more than interesting, it'd be impactful.
So we've talked about sort of crowdsourcing, crowdfunding, and I've written a couple of articles on it and the role of that as a financial mechanism within entrepreneurs and kind of scaling water technology. But you've got quite a sort of interesting vision, idea, concept, right, Victoria, for sort of, can you run us through this? Decentralized community and crowdfunding sourcing is part of that?
Yeah, and it starts with community agency and understanding value of water and how it operates, and this one water idea, that whether it's clean to waste, from source to that the whole thing, it's certainly this one water. And there's so many people, and this came from World Water Week, right? Syria World War, the World Water Week in Stockholm, and there was so many academics and some really good best practice, but it was everybody was in silos. So one of them, a lovely professor, came up to me and they said, I'm an academic. And I said, oh, well, I'm trade. I better sit down then. And what
I'll keep my distance, right? Yeah, I'll be over in the corner.
I better not say anything, because I was, and I'm thinking, actually, we've got enough between us all to actually say, let's just do it for ourselves. Let's crowd funds and let's really work together to say, what should a community, what should a network, decentralized network look like? And let's make it work. Let's be non-proprietary. Let's be open. Let's not be run by strategic consultants. Let's not be run by government money or shareholder money. Let's crowdfund, pull together the best brains and the real doers that really want to save water and make sure that water is available for all. And we won't build it by committee, we'll build it by consensus, but bringing in the best tech, best practitioners. And then we can say, now what's the excuse? Yeah, why don't we do that? I mean, I think it would be a phenomenal idea to just take it and say, can we actually do this?
I love that this is not just a technology discussion. This is a discussion on how to creatively use tech to mobilize stakeholders to solve the challenges that we face. So it's, it's more than tech, it's more than a business model. It is, as they say, creating a catalytic community around this notion of leaks and what that means, and, delivering access to safe drinking water to those in need. I could see a whole slide deck on this.
Oh, no more PowerPoints. No more PowerPoints. We'll do it first. But
only kidding.
But I think it's important, and you see some big corporations really meaning what they're trying to say about now actually being, and I think there's a big move into water and actually have that social license to operate, and saying actually we need to have a grown-up conversation. But let's learn, because we won't get it right. The whole point of the crowdfunding, and I know we're going to fail at bits of it, but that's a learning path to make sure that we can create something even better. So there's going to be challenges that we haven't thought of, but because everybody's open about sharing and embracing that failure, scary word there in the water industry, ain't allowed to fail, is that we're going to learn and we're going to deliver so much more. And I feel fortunate to be able to be in this position, to be able to make these statements and challenge and actually say, why don't we do it? What's stopping us? Just because somebody hasn't done it before?
I think with the whole crowdfunding model, it's quite unique because people feel ownership. They feel part. It's kind of creating that C word that everyone wants to create, right? A community. But I think it's kind of bringing in people from an early stage to kind of help build something. But obviously, this is not the Peloton where people are getting the first pilot bike, and we won't talk about what's happened to Peloton. But in terms of, so you're talking about kind of creating this like utopian vision of what a water system could look like from scratch, right? Is that kind of where this is going?
Well, I think utopian is also not making everything visible. Utopian sounds like you've got to lay all the scars that you were knocked into you and you bear as a part of that process, because we learn as much from that as we do as it being a shiny new thing with a ribbon being cut by some world dignitary somewhere. This is actually, what are we learning and what do we really want from our water, and are we consuming too much or are we not? What are we thinking about? Do we need to change as a society or not? We don't know the answer to that. We're just dictated to. We don't know what's going on. So I think utopia, I don't think we'll ever reach it, but we could have a lot better systems than out there already.
Yeah, I mean, utopia by its definition is pretty unattainable, right? Unless it's in fiction. I think you could, I mean, not that we're going to talk about UK politics, but you could say that's pretty dystopian right now. But I mean, there's when you're talking about so it's worth looking at the NEOM example. I know, kind of, Will, we've talked about this before, and sort of colleague Gavin von Tonder and what they're doing over in Saudi. Whereas if you could build a water system from scratch and look around the world at best practice, actually what that would look like. And kind of NEOM had an interesting conversation with Gavin over in Sydney in terms of NEOM effectively producing its own regulations, because there's nothing there. It's in the middle of the desert, right? So could you have a network with zero minimal losses if you could produce water from desalination and rethink the entire process using hydrogen? What would you do? And I think in terms of that, Will and I have used the word moonshot before as a kind of mission. And there's something there. What's going on? It's attracting. It's quite divisive at the moment, but actually, it's quite unique as well. Like, if you could look back at all the way water systems have been engineered and rethink every single element of that to have the most efficient system in the world, it's worth keeping an eye on as one. And
I think NEOM is aspirational, and I think absolutely should go to it. We drag in the water industry. We drag archaic processes in called tendering. The tender progress by its nature is gladiatorial and restrictive.
I'm going to throw this out just to sort of push it a bit. I'd like to see us get rid of the word industry. So water industry, I mean, what is the water industry, right? and instead rethink, what is our relationship with water? What do we want it to be? And, that includes valuing water and, ensuring that people have access to safe drinking water, as opposed to it's a plumbing problem. It's not a plumbing problem. It is, how you value that liter of water, and that informs everything else from a technology perspective and, business model and all that. So I'm going to get a little weepy now, but
it's a really good point. Well, I think actually as part of the dissemination of this, we should throw that out there. If you could rethink the entire, and not sector, not industry, it's too functional sounding. It's like, actually, it's a community of passionate individuals that are united by the purpose to solve water. Right?
Yes,
that's what it is, right?
Absolutely. And you're using, and at the moment we use vocabulary, just like the industry itself, that creates its own silos and barriers. Because we say it's therefore, why are you in the oil and gas industry or in the automotive industry, and you should be more, water should be the sexiest industry, it should be the career choice for all. It's what you should aspire to be. And the language we use, you're quite right.
Language is critical. If we're going to engage the layperson on the value of water and how to rethink it, then, Tom has heard me rant about this. We can't use the word drought. We need to change the words that we use to engage and to, highlight the value. Okay,
and to address this inconvenient truth, it's going to be uncomfortable.
Right. Well,
you get and we've got to do it. It's like saying to the doctor, I'm sorry, I've got piles. How many people will say that? But you can't fix the problem and you're honest about it.
Ladies and gentlemen, I think we found our soundbite from the episode right there.
And Victoria, you were the first guest because we knew you would poke the bear and lean in with bang. So you've definitely done that and gotten. It's interesting. Tom and I have talked about this last season and the season before a bit, which is we want to have these conversations and we want to be provocative in a constructive way, and we want a takeaway. Well, I think we've got a few takeaways here from the conversation in terms of, let's change the language. Let's, rethink how we engage with water, how we deliver water differently.
But I think the takeaway, and also to continue the discussion, so actually use what we're talking about now to sort of keep engagement and just to get people listening and thinking and then involved as well. So we'll certainly try and do that kind of with the social media output. Victoria, there's a kind of final question that I want to maybe introduce in this season, which I'm going to actually borrow from a friend of mine. I took part recently in a 24-hour podcast-a-thon with a friend, entrepreneur in Sussex called Sam Thomas, fantastic guy. I met him recently, and he was doing 24 guests in 24 hours. And when he found out I was in Sydney, I became his 4 a.m. shift, right? So the middle of the morning in the UK, it's quite a challenge to get guests. And he's like, dude, you're going to be in Sydney in the afternoon. We can make this work. So we had this really good conversation about kind of running small businesses and where we are in life and fatherhood and everything. And at the very end, he said to me, Tom, if you could kind of go back to your 18-year-old self, what would be your piece of advice? And I thought, I just love the way that is a kind of question. Mm-hmm. So let's ask that to you, Victoria. If you could go back to an 18-year-old Victoria Edwards, what would be your sole piece of advice?
Horse riding is a spectator sport.
Sorry, the audio's gone just at that crucial moment. Can you say that again?
Yeah, I'll say that. So I'm saying
wait, did you get censored out by some chance? That's why we couldn't hear you?
Someone's hacked in and listened,
probably, right?
Probably,
yeah, they're nervous. I was being a bit flippant and I explain myself. I'm just saying that horse riding is a spectator sport. And what I mean about that is you have to learn how to fall, not fail, but fall. Okay? Your ability to climb that height of that mountain, get to the top, but knowing if you fall, that community you've created, a community that cares about water, will catch you, will keep you safe, and will set you on your way again. So it's not about failing, it's about learning how to.
I love that.
Wow.
That's very deep. Yeah, I love it. Initially on horse riding, but actually it's relating in a much more deeper parallel to life, and actually the ability to fail and get back up again. And obviously we had you speak in Amsterdam at the F-Up night, talking about failing forwards, right? And actually big mistakes. I think that's a great message to sort of take away.
Thank you.
Wow.
That was an anarchic moment, cathartic for me. Yeah, absolutely. But we can do this. I'm sorry, I'm just put final. We can do this. We can.
We will do this.
We'll make it happen. Yeah, I think that we always talk about that hashtag, the bias for action, that we look for when we talk through potential guests. And Victoria, you've definitely got that spirit and that bias for action to kind of change things and make things work. And I guess the other thing is, don't always ask permission. It's a key message, right? It's kind of just, the private sector doesn't always ask permission. It kind of gets it done, brings in the talent it needs to do to kind of drive change. So, but anyway, I think we're almost at the end of the episode now. So thanks so much for joining us and kickstarting the season with a bang. It's been an absolute pleasure. I think we didn't get around to chatting about half the things we wanted to, but that's exactly the plan of the stream is it's free flowing conversation and it goes where it needs to go. So yeah, I really appreciate your time, Victoria. But Will, final comments from yourself?
Well, I really like where this is headed. Again, it's more than technology. It's leveraging technology. It's really rethinking relationships and activation. That's it. It's how do you get a broad group of people to care about something that they should value, and they currently do. Not that everyone doesn't, but for me, it's the non-tech side of the conversation that we had that's most meaningful to me.
I think I've just thought of the headline for the episode: activating community agency on water. We can fine tune it and wordsmith it a bit, but I think that really summarizes what we're trying to do here, is the power of community agency and how we can activate that.
I think you need to have like a horse image somewhere in this, though.
We can put the horse emoji and put it into the title somewhere.
Yeah,
right?
I really like what you said.
Yeah, and I think we should. It's about removing territory. Water is not territorial, and that's either intellectually territorial or geographically territorial or financially territorial. It just is. It just exists, and we need to make sure that it exists for all of us. And it's no more difficult than that. And whilst we're in this whole framework that we're currently in, we've got to break it.
Right.
I love it.
Great note to finish. Brilliant. All right. Well, thanks, Victoria, for your time. Wishing you the best of luck for that continued journey on Poking the Bear. Thanks for joining us on the stream, and it's been a pleasure. Thanks, Will.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, Victoria.
Bye.
Good to see you again.
Bye.
Bye,
guys.
Tom.
See you soon.
Yeah.